Hi, good afternoon, everyone. You're all very welcome to UCD Smurfit School Executive MBA webinar today. My name is Edel O'Leary, and I am the Senior Manager for all the MBA programs here at Smurfit School, of which we have two. The full-time MBA, which is a 12-month intensive full-time on-campus program here in Blackrock, County Dublin, and the Executive MBA, which is a 2-year part-time program also on campus here in Blackrock, and you're very welcomed here today. This is actually our final webinar for anybody looking to start their MBA journey in August of 2026. And I do hope that you've managed to join us previously because we've held a number of these events now over the full academic year. There are many aspects to the MBA, so we try to cover a different topic at every event. And many of our online sessions that we've held over the academic year are actually recorded and available to watch back on our YouTube channel, and the link to which you can get from our website, or indeed one of my colleagues might actually post into the chat for you now. We've had a number of guest lectures on strategy from some of our faculty members. We explored the global travel opportunities and the applied learning projects on the MBA program. We heard from students, we've heard from some alumni on the power of the class network and on the Leadership and Employability Advancement Program, LEAP. Today is something a little bit different. You're going to hear from my colleague Louise Campbell, who I'll introduce to you now, who is the Senior Manager of the Careers Network. And Louise is going to speak to us today on negotiating in the era of EU Pay Transparency and how the UCD Smurfit Executive MBA can help you articulate your value, which is all part of the LEAP journey that you will experience with us. We are not planning to go through both our MBA programs in detail today. As I said, we've covered that already on numerous occasions. But suffice to say, there is lots of information available on our website, and my colleagues will post a few links as we go through the presentation today, and we hope to be with you for just under an hour. And what we're also planning to do is actually to host a Q&A session at the end of Louise's session. But just to introduce you briefly to the team and let you know who's going to be speaking today, there's myself, Edel O'Leary, Louise Campbell from our Careers Network. We're also joined by our full-time program manager, Gillian Coghill, and Gillian will be available to actually answer questions for you from both the full-time MBA and our executive MBA. Our executive MBA program manager is on annual leave at the moment, so Gillian is going to step into both roles and will be able to answer questions on both programs for you. And then, of course, Mairead Mulvey will finish out the webinar today on the admissions process. Suffice to say that Mairead is actually focusing mostly on, I would say nearly 100%, I should say, Mairead will correct me on that, on those students who are looking to join us this August. And just so you know, we have foundations starting in August this year, the dates of which are actually on the website, but it's reasonably early. I think it's something like the 18th or 19th of August. So if anybody's looking to join us this August, certainly stay on this webinar and please pay attention to Mairead's session at the end. And then for anybody else who's actually just really come along to listen and is actually thinking more about August 2027, what will happen now is that we will close pretty much the applications process mid-summer, late summer for the current intake. And then we won't restart until August 1st, okay? So the website will be refreshed. Mairead will start a new applications process, and we will start doing lots of open events, and you can hear from us and you can come and meet us. So for today, I'm still focusing on those joining in August this year. Please do listen along, but if you are looking to start in August 2027, and we've had a look at the list, some of you expressed interest in August 2027, that's fine, but we will be focusing on that then more thoroughly kind of late September, and as I say, opening the website to applications in October. Okay, so without further ado, I'm going to pass over to you, Louise, if that's okay, and let you take it from here. Suffice to say, the session is being recorded. We will make it available to you at the end of the session. And we will be taking questions then through the Q&A function. Pop them in as we go along, and we'll endeavour to answer them if they're particularly unique to you. And if they're of a broader interest, what we'll do is we'll hold them back, and then we'll speak collectively as a group when Louise and Mairead are finished presenting. Over to you, Louise.
Lovely, that's great. Thank you, Adele, and good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining us here today. As Adele said, my name is Louise Campbell, and I'm the Senior Manager of the Careers Network here in Smurfit. This afternoon, I want to focus on a topic that is becoming, I think, increasingly important in today's employment market, and this revolves around understanding the value you bring to the workplace and how you communicate that effectively and how you position yourself for future career opportunities. The world of work is changing rapidly. We are seeing significant shifts driven by AI, digital transformation, and much more structured and evidence-based hiring processes. There's a lot more, obviously, with the new directive coming in June of this month, greater transparency around pay, and therefore an increasing focus on leadership capability and commercial impact. So as a result, I think career progression is no longer simply about experience or qualifications or being a great negotiator when it comes to receiving a job offer. It's about how effectively you can demonstrate your impact, how you can communicate your leadership potential, and how you can position yourself within an ever-changing and competitive market. This is not only relevant for people who are looking for a job, it's relevant for professionals who are seeking promotion, leadership opportunities, maybe career transitioning or looking at greater international mobility. Employers are now really looking for individuals who can demonstrate impact, commercial awareness, and leadership capability in a clear and evidence-based way. I'm also going to spend a little bit of time on this webinar discussing one of the major differentiators of the MBA experience here at Smurfit, and that is our LEAP programme, which stands for, and I'm sure many of you on the call know this, but it stands for Leadership, Employability and Advancement Programme. So just moving to the next slide, why professionals consider an MBA. And I think before we go deeper into some of the changes that we are seeing in today's employment market, it's worth taking a step back and asking really a more personal question. And that is, why do people choose to do an MBA in the first place? And for many professionals, I think there comes a point in their career when they begin to reflect more strategically on where they are today, where they want to go next, and how they can position themselves for that next phase of growth. This might be based on a desire to move into a more senior leadership role, to broaden your commercial experience beyond a particular functional or technical area. Maybe you're looking to increase your influence within the organization. It could be about pursuing international opportunities, whatever a career transition might look like. Or else it could be just about developing greater confidence and executive presence as a leader. And at that point, I think many people start to ask themselves important questions. How do I take that next step in my career? How do I demonstrate my leadership potential? And how, very importantly, do I communicate the value of my experience more effectively? And this is particularly true for experienced professionals who are highly capable in their roles, but rarely have the opportunity to take a step back and think strategically about how they position themselves, how they communicate their impact, and how, again, importantly, do they prepare for the next phase of their career? And these questions matter now more than ever before because organizations are becoming more transparent, more evidence-based, and more focused on leadership capability. So professionals need more than just strong experience. They need the ability to communicate their value, to influence effectively, and to operate confidently in complex business environments. And this is really where programs such as the MBA, the Executive MBA, can be genuinely transformational. Beyond developing knowledge and business capability, they certainly provide the space and the perspective and the support to help professionals reflect on their career and to strengthen their leadership identity and to prepare with confidence for whatever comes next. And that is very much where the LEAP program plays such an important part within the MBA experience. So moving on, Amanda, to the EU Pay Transparency Directive. The directive is one of the most significant developments in employment law across Europe in recent years, and it will fundamentally change how organisations approach hiring, compensation, promotion, and pay equity. At its core, the legislation is designed to increase transparency, fairness, and consistency in pay practices, while looking at reducing unexplained pay gaps, and create a more structured and objective compensation framework. In Ireland, it is being implemented this month. We are behind some deadlines, so there is a phased approach happening at the moment. But organisations are really preparing for what this means in practice if they are not there already. So what changes are we likely to see? I think obviously one of the most visible changes will be greater transparency in salary, in job ads, with employers now required to include salary ranges. And this, gives candidates far greater visibility around compensation from the outset of a recruitment process. And this can save an awful lot of time, and so you're not going to be led down certain tunnels thinking that you're right for this role, and then you get to the fifth interview and then you get a salary offer that's way below your expectations. Another major change relates to salary history, and I think that this is going to be one of the most beneficial parts of the Act. Employers are no longer permitted to ask candidates questions such as, what were you earning in your previous role? And this is an important development because historically underpayment follows individuals from role to role, and that perpetuates inequality over time. So, job seekers should be remunerated based on the value of the role and what they bring to it, rather than what they previously earned or negotiated. Another part of the legislation is that employees will also have greater rights to request pay information. So while you can't specifically ask what a colleague earns, there will be increased visibility around salary banding and pay structures for particular roles and levels. There's also things like stronger reporting obligations for larger employers, particularly organisations with more than 100 employees. And this creates far greater accountability around pay practices and pay gap reporting. And for employers in Ireland, it also means more formalised salary banding structures. So that brings greater consistency in hiring decisions, increased governance around compensation, and a stronger focus on objective, evidence-based criteria when determining pay. There's also more positives, I think, for employees, and that's, apart from the greater visibility around salary levels, you can be much better prepared for opportunities. You can make much more informed career decisions and then have much more transparent conversations around progression and advancement if you're in a current role. An important clarification just before I move on is that the legislation does not mean that everyone earns the same salary. Negotiation does not disappear. Employers and employees will still retain flexibility to reward exceptional performance, also to reward scarce skills in the market and highly sought after talent. But what it does mean is that organisations will more than ever need evidence-based justification for why individuals sit at different points within a salary range. And this is where the MBA and the Executive MBA students should view these changes very positively. I think those who can communicate strategically, who can quantify outcomes, who can demonstrate leadership capability and show commercial impact and be able to translate that experience into measurable business results are much more likely to position themselves more effectively within salary bands moving forward. So ultimately, the intention behind this legislation is to create greater transparency, fairness, and informed decision-making throughout the employment life cycle. And it's to ensure that people are remunerated for the value that they create. And again, particularly relevant at MBA level, because graduates often enter organizations at very different levels in very different roles. And that's anything from manager to senior manager positions through strategy, transformation, consulting, and product leadership roles. And importantly, titles and compensation can vary enormously across sectors. A senior manager in a technology company, for example, may be compensated very differently from a senior manager in professional services or any other industry. And this greater level of transparency and clarity should ultimately help professionals make much more informed decisions about both career opportunities and long-term career positioning. And this, I think, brings us to an important question. If organizations are becoming more transparent about salary ranges, how should candidates think about where they sit within those ranges? So there is a key shift for you as a job seeker. One of the biggest shifts, I think, is the way that you should be looking at salary positioning, because historically, many candidates would approach a salary discussion with the question, how high can I negotiate given what I was previously on in my last role? However, I think the more important and the strategic question is, where do I sit within this salary range and why? For example, if a role is advertised with a salary band of 70 to 100,000, that range may be designed to accommodate several different types of candidates. So at the lower end, it might suit somebody who's transitioning into this sector or stepping into this level for the first time. The middle of the range might be appropriate for somebody who's got strong operational experience and, highly relevant transferable skills. But the upper end is probably reserved for somebody who's already operating successfully at that level elsewhere, who can come in and deliver impact almost immediately with minimal onboarding and relatively low risk to the organization. So it's very important that candidates and job seekers who are looking at that type of role don't simply assume, I've got 10 years experience, I should be at the top end of that scale. Or I've got an MBA and therefore I should automatically sit at the top end of that. Because employers now are evaluating things using a much broader set of factors, and that would include things like how relevant your industry experience is, what is your scale of leadership exposure, what is the scale and the complexities of the responsibilities that you have managed in the past. Have you technical or specialist expertise in this particular role, and how easily can the skills that you have transfer into this new position? What is the commercial impact that you bring? What have you proven yourself in before, and how relevant is this to the role? And importantly, how quickly are you going to be able to create value within the new organization? So one of the most useful things you can ask yourself is really, how quickly have I solved similar business problems like this before? How can I deliver results quickly? How much onboarding or support am I going to need in order for me to transition into this new role? And ultimately, am I a risk for the new employer? Because organizations will often pay more, not simply for the experience, but for reduced risk factor and a greater likelihood of success. And in many ways now, salary positioning is becoming less about what you believe you deserve or what you've been on historically. And it's more about the value that you can demonstrate and the impact that you can deliver and the confidence that that's going to bring an employer. So what will employers do differently? I think employers today are becoming, as I've mentioned before, far more evidence-based in how they assess and reward talent. Salary positioning is no longer determined by how confident someone sounds in an interview or how good they are at negotiating. It's based on what an individual can clearly demonstrate in terms of capability, impact, and leadership potential. And again, at MBA level, employers are evaluating a broad range of leadership qualities and commercial competencies. They're looking at areas such as leadership readiness, stakeholder management, strategic thinking, business judgment, adaptability, and the ability to operate in what is effectively a more complex and fast-changing business environment than ever before. And these are the capabilities that differentiate successful leaders from strong individual contributors. So at this MBA level, I think the MBA helps students build and strengthen these capabilities But this is very much where the LEAP program becomes an important differentiator within the MBA experience, because LEAP not only helps students develop the competencies, but also gives you a lot of opportunity to practice, to test, and to refine them in realistic professional settings. You know, through reflection, through structured feedback, through assessment exercises, employer engagement, mock interviews, all of these things that happen in the LEAP program help students gain a much deeper understanding of what their strengths are and also what their developmental areas are, because you will really assess your own leadership style and look at where you're strong and where you need to develop in order to be seen at that broad leadership level that employers might be looking for particular roles. And I think most importantly, the ability to be able to assess and to practice through the LEAP program, you become more confident and effective at demonstrating your capabilities, communicating your impact, and translating that experience that you have into commercially relevant examples that resonate with employers. In a competitive and evidence-based hiring market, that ability to connect experience, leadership capability, and business impact is becoming a significant advantage. So moving on to LEAP, and many of you on the call will know all about the LEAP program, but I just wanted to really bring it back to tie it into salary negotiation and pay transparency. LEAP stands for Leadership, Employability and Advancement Program. It is a key differentiator within the MBA program. What makes it highly valuable is that it is practical, and it's specifically designed to help students bridge the gap between the academic learning and the real-world leadership environment. And at its core, it focuses on leadership development and self-awareness. So it provides students with the opportunity to better understand how you are perceived as leaders, how to identify your strengths and recognize areas for future development and growth. And throughout the program, you engage in a range of practical and reflective experiences. And I've mentioned some of those, but psychometric testing is another one, assessment days, external market experts, spending time with you, structured professional feedback, and executive coaching. And I think one of the most valuable aspects of the experience is the opportunity to learn alongside experienced professionals from a wide range of sectors, industries, and leadership contexts. So getting that exposure to different perspectives, experiences, and approaches will often broaden your thinking and challenge your existing assumptions in very powerful ways. And for many experienced professionals, one of the greatest benefits of LEAP is that it creates genuine space for reflection. And it's something that is often very difficult to prioritize amid a busy career and demanding professional responsibilities. So it gives you that time to step back and think more strategically about your leadership style and your career direction, which ultimately strengthens your confidence and helps you prepare more intentionally for the next stage of your professional journey. Ultimately, I think LEAP is designed to help students become more self-aware and more effective and more confident leaders. And that in a salary negotiation situation gives you a competitive edge over people who have not had that time to be able to sit back and think about where their leadership capabilities can really impact organizations. So looking at LEAP competencies, I think the LEAP competencies, they are closely aligned with the leadership capabilities that all organizations in the Irish market are looking for at the moment when they are hiring, developing, and promoting senior talent. So today's employers need leaders who can navigate ambiguity, and we've all seen that over the past couple of years. How do you lead through change? How do you think strategically and communicate effectively across diverse stakeholder groups and operate confidently across functions, cultures, and digital environments? Technical expertise remains important, but on its own, it's rarely enough. Organizations and businesses are looking for professionals who can really combine commercial judgment with adaptability, influence, collaboration, and strong leadership communication. And that is where this framework becomes really valuable. So the framework provides students with a practical leadership language, and it helps them translate their experience into commercially relevant examples. So through ongoing practice, you get employer engagement and structured feedback. Students are starting to really get and develop a deeper understanding of how they lead, how they influence, and the impact that they create within organizations. So then you learn to communicate. What are the results that I have delivered? What are the challenges that I have overcome? How do I lead and influence others? And what value do I bring to an organization? And that in an interview environment, if you can articulate that well and clearly, you are automatically positioning yourself within a band, whether that's the 70 to 100K, and you're pushing yourself far beyond people who do not have those abilities. It's a major differentiator in interviews, in promotion discussions, in salary conversations, and in broader career progression. So I'm not just talking about an interview situation here. If you're on this call and if you're in a role and you're planning on staying in that role, these are all developmental skills that you learn, which will really help you in a workplace environment, whether it's for a current opportunity or a future opportunity. And one of the things, and one example of how we're trying to bring employability and leadership development into a much more modern and practical environment is through our partnership with WANDA. So if we move to the WANDA slide, thank you, Amanda. This year, the Smurfit Careers Network, we have partnered with a company called WANDA to launch what is believed to be one of the first AI-enabled immersive interview simulations specifically designed for MBA employability. And it's something that we're really excited about here in Smurfit. We introduced it within the MBA LEAP program this year to give students the opportunity to practice realistic behavioural interviews in a highly interactive and commercially relevant setting. So this simulation replicates the pace, the structure, and the follow-up questioning that you are likely to experience in a real recruitment and leadership assessment process. It is based around the LEAP competency framework, and it's aligned to the type of behaviours and leadership competencies that employers in the Irish market are looking for. So following the simulation, you receive structured feedback and a transcript of your performance, which then feeds into real-life human coaching conversations. And what this creates is really, I suppose, a very practical development loop. You practice, you receive feedback, you reflect, you refine, and then you practice again. So it's an incredibly valuable tool, because one of the biggest challenges for many professionals is not capability. It's actually having the opportunity to practice communicating your capabilities clearly, confidently, and concisely in high pressure situations. So the combination of AI-enabled practice together with human coaching and feedback enable students to really strengthen that executive communication skills, interview confidence, and overall leadership presence in a really practical way. So the new core leadership skill, it's being able to articulate your value. And I think many highly capable professionals find this surprisingly difficult. They often focus, and we would see this when we are interviewing and coaching our students. You might be a technical expert. You might have dealt in huge projects and delivered amazing results. But people often focus on the responsibility rather than the outcomes. And employers, however, are looking for evidence of impact. So the candidates that are standing out in senior management and senior level interviews in the market at the moment are the ones who typically can very clearly and concisely explain what they did, why it mattered, what was the impact that they had, and what was the business problem it helped to solve. And certainly at MBA and senior leadership level, organizations are being very selective in their hiring process in the Irish market at the moment. They're not simply going to pay for activity. They're going to pay for outcomes. They're going to pay for leadership capability and business contribution. And that, I think, is where the LEAP program plays a very important role. Through mock interviews, structured feedback, employer engagement, and repeated practice, students learn how to translate that experience into clear examples of impact. So ultimately, the LEAP program, I think, helps students become more confident and effective at communicating the value that you bring to an organization. Moving on to AI and salary, I think we can't have a webinar these days without talking about the impact of AI in the market at the moment. But a huge shift that we are seeing in the employment market today is the growing value being placed on AI and digital fluency. And that's not just in technical roles, but obviously across leadership and business functions more broadly. For example, we're seeing an expectation that all leaders across all functions are expected to use AI tools to improve reporting efficiency, to analyze customer trends faster, to support decision-making, or to streamline operations. So leaders don't necessarily need to build the technology, but increasingly they need to understand how to lead within AI-enabled organizations. And professionals who can combine that strategic business capability with AI fluency are likely to position themselves much more strongly within those salary bands moving forward. So moving on just to the final takeaways, I think as we finish up this afternoon, there's three key themes that I'd encourage you to take away from this discussion today. Firstly, salary conversations are changing. Secondly, I think hiring conversations are changing. And finally, leadership conversations are changing too. We're moving into a much more transparent, evidence-based and strategically focused employment market, one where organizations want greater clarity around impact, around contribution, and around leadership capability. And as a result, success is no longer driven by experience or qualifications alone. It's really about understanding the value that you bring, how to be able to communicate it effectively, and how to position yourself strategically for future opportunities. And that's where the MBA and the executive MBA experience, and particularly the LEAP program, can be so valuable, because together they are designed not only to develop knowledge and capability, but also to help students build confidence, to strengthen your leadership effectiveness, and to apply your learning in real commercial environments. And, ultimately our goal here is to help students become more effective and more self-aware and more impactful leaders who can really navigate that change and create long-term career value. So that's the end of my presentation. Thank you very much for your time this afternoon. I'd be delighted to answer any questions. I think I saw a few coming up through the chat box as I was talking. Thank you.
Howdy, my name is Mairead Mulvey and I'm the MBA Admissions Manager. I'm just going to briefly go through how to apply for our two programs because they're slightly different. So our full-time MBA, we require an undergraduate degree, a minimum of 5 years professional experience. We will consider 3, but it has to be exceptional essentially. We do require a GMAT, a GRE or an EA. Potentially you can get a waiver for these exams depending on the level of experience you have essentially and the level of education. Usually you'd need a master's to qualify for waivers. You need 2 recommendation forms, an English language test if that's applicable to where you're from, and obviously to complete your application form, which is found online. Now, what I will tell you about the full-time MBA at the moment, because we're only literally 2 months away from the start date, which is the 24th of August. And if you're coming from outside the EU, you will need to get a visa, a study visa, and it's probably slightly late to put that into process at the moment, to start that process. So I would recommend, if you're looking at coming this year, if you're not already based in Ireland or in the EU, that you look at our 2027 programme at that stage. And we do recommend that you arrive early. I mean, it starts on the program starts on the 24th of August, but we really do recommend you're here 2 or 3 weeks earlier in order to, to get settled, find your bearings, and be ready to go as you hit the floor running. Is that the phrase? But anyway, hit the ground running even. So that's the full-time MBA. The executive MBA, again, an undergraduate degree, a minimum of 7 years professional experience, but we will consider 5. 2 recommendation forms, and again to complete the application form online. The important thing that I want to stress here is you do not need a GMAT or an EA exam to be enrolled in our executive MBA programme any longer. That policy actually changed 2 years ago. There is a pathway. If you don't have an undergraduate degree, you can do the executive assessment exam, and that will, give you access basically to the program. But once you have an undergraduate degree, please be advised you do not need a GMAT or an EA. What I will say about the executive MBA at the moment, the class is 90% full. We are still accepting applications, but I would encourage you, if you're thinking for this this year's enrolment in August. The start date, as Adele said, it's actually Wednesday, the 19th of August. There are 4 foundation days, so Wednesday through to Saturday, and it's compulsory that you attend those days, because that's the start of the programme. That's where you meet everybody, you have your induction and orientation, and our academic director, just doesn't want anybody to miss that, because it's very important in terms of setting the scene, setting expectations, and if you're coming in after that, you'll be on the back foot. So in order to be fair to yourself, just be aware that you need to be present for the 19th through to the 22nd. Anyway, that's the start date for the AMBA. So if you're thinking of coming this year, I'm more than happy to talk to you over the next couple of weeks. You're welcome to come into campus. We can have a coffee. I can go through everything. If you'd like a telephone call or organise a Zoom call, there's no problem at all. More than happy to have a chat and advise you on anything that you need clarification on. Essentially, you can see my email address there. The other thing I need to point out in relation to the Executive MBA is that our scholarship process has been completed for this year. So if that's one of your key considerations in terms of, being able to come and study for our Executive MBA, you're probably better to wait until the intake for 2027. We open for applications on October the 1st. I'm more than happy, again, as I said, if you're looking at 2027, to meet you or talk to you once, we're into September essentially, and thereafter. I would also advise earlier applications. If you are sure that you want to come maybe next year, apply in October, November. There's no harm in that at all. So that's really it. Thank you to everybody who has joined our series of webinars and events over the last academic year. I think it's been an exceptional year. We've had a higher demand for our 2 classes than we've ever had before. So I can see that there's some of our incoming students on our webinar today. So we're looking forward to meeting you in August. And again, if you have anything you need to ask me about, just reach out, there's no problem. And again, as Louise and Adele, I'm here to answer any questions now also. Thank you.
Super. Thank you so much, Mairead, and thank you, Louise. So we're going to move now to a Q&A session. So if anybody has any questions, you can pop them into the Q&A inbox. I'm delighted to hear that there's some of the students who will be joining us in August on the line. You're all very welcome, guys. So Gillian, can I pass over to you just to ask if there's any question there in the Q&A inbox that you might like to actually just read out? And I'll be happy to answer it myself if relevant, or I'll pass it to one of my colleagues.
Sure, thanks, Adele. There's one question which generally comes up, as it's probably the most exciting part of any MBA program, is around the travel modules. So just the opportunities to travel on the executive program, I suppose, versus the full-time program.
Sure, great.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Yes, a very relevant question. So both programs actually travel together. So I'll start with the joint modules where we actually go abroad, because they are actually very important. So in March every year, there is a module called Doing Business in International Markets. And on the MBA, the Smurfit MBA, we have a very particular focus on the global market, on the global environment and geopolitics and everything that's going on in the world. So in March every year, Professor Patrick Gibbons leads a module which brings us to a country location very far away from what we in Ireland and in Europe are used to actually dealing with. For the last number of years, that location has been Singapore, and students on the full-time MBA have no choice. It's a compulsory module, so they must travel with us. And our executive MBA students have the choice of joining us on that module. Later in May, there is an international consulting project, which is an opportunity to actually apply the learning that's been delivered so far on both programs. And it is an opportunity to turn your learning into applied projects, consultancy projects for small to medium-sized businesses who want to work with MBA students to solve a business problem. It's done in teams. We travel to a location, mostly in Europe, much more closer to home. And students work over a number of weeks in advance of traveling, and for about 4 days in the location, in the company's business. And the module is assessed by way of a company presentation while we are abroad. Last number of years, we have chosen Lisbon as our destination of choice. And students on the full-time MBA program must complete that module. It is compulsory on their program, and the executive MBAs have a choice of choosing between it or the Doing Business in International Markets module in the March of the following year. There is another alternative to travel, which people often speak about as part of their what they have loved about the program. If you speak to any of our alumni, they will talk to you about GNAM. And just in case anybody doesn't know what that is, it is the Global Network of Advanced Management. And our full-time MBA students have an opportunity to travel in October of every year. And that is to over 32 international leading business schools around the world. They will run a week-long program. Our students choose which program suits their interests, their career interests, and then they travel to that in October. On the executive MBA side of the house, that week has literally just happened. So anybody who follows me on LinkedIn will see that I've been liking a number of our executive MBAs journeys and thoughts on their trips abroad. And the executive MBA is always approximately second week of June. So you can jump on the GNAM website and go to Network Weeks, Executive Network Weeks, and you'll see what has just been on offer to our executive MBA students. And again, choice of 32 business schools, whatever is suiting your career interests or your personal interests, you're free to select one of those programs. They're unique to UCD Smurfit School. The fees are free, but you must pay for your own accommodation and flights, which of course can vary depending on what country you choose to travel to. So I'm guessing that is some of what students are wishing to actually hear about when it comes to travel with the UCD Smurfit MBA. Thanks a million, Gillian. Has anybody got any other further questions, either to Louise on the careers or the LEAP side of the house, or possibly to Mairead on admissions? I'll leave the moment there if anybody has anything else they'd like to ask us at this time.
Del, just something else
Yeah.
has come in there, if I can break in terms of just what stage are we at in terms of applications at this
Sure.
stage? You know,
Yeah.
for obviously for the August Foundation Week,
Yeah.
ahead of that, and also just generally around, particularly in the AMBA side, the scheduling and the dates,
Oh,
and
yeah.
the time,
Sure.
the overall time commitment.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry, just to finish out on travel, I see Niall has asked, are there fees with the other travel modules? So yes, Niall, there are what we call copay for the executive MBA students to choose from when they're traveling with us. On the full-time MBA, because the modules are core, it's what we call core, you have no choice but to do them, and they're covered. The copay for the executive MBAs changes from year to year depending where we travel to. On average, the European destination is in and around €600, which covers all your hotel costs, your flights, and a number of meals on the trip. And on the further afield trip, which is the Doing Business in International Markets, again, it varies from year to year, but on average, it's approximately €1,200 to cover all your flights, all your accommodation, some cultural activity, and 2 evenings of dinners with the larger group. And again, every year it changes from year to year, but we flag those well in advance, and we give you multiple opportunities to pay it as you go, so that it doesn't come as one big price at any point in time. So many of our students travel in year one for the lower fee option, and then some choose to travel in year two for the further away destination. This people always love to come, so they are two very, very popular activities when you're doing your MBA. Okay, I hope that answers Niall's question. So back to your question, Gillian. Yeah, as Mairead said, we're pretty much full on the full-time MBA, and particularly if you're traveling from overseas. Our feeling is that the visa situation for this year, as you all know, is reasonably complex. So if anybody's looking to travel from overseas, you've probably left it a little bit too late for August. Certainly, if you're Irish or if you can travel from the EU on an EU passport, yes, there is probably still opportunity for the full-time MBA to join us in August 2026. Certainly on the executive side of the house, almost 80% of our students are Irish, and I would imagine that it is probably much easier, and the executive MBA is still accepting applications for August this year, albeit I would say a small amount. Mairead, you probably want to jump in there. There's not a tremendous amount of space.
No,
but certainly,
there isn't. Yeah, and
yeah.
that I did just to come back to that. That's why if you're thinking about it for this year, please either apply pretty much straight away, or again, if you need to talk to me or come in and have a chat, please do so. But I would really encourage doing that over the next week or two. I'm available, happy to meet anybody. But yeah, we will be. We're under a little bit of pressure to get it closed off, simply because due to a huge volume of applications that we've had over the year. Yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, and then what will happen is those classes will be formed. Or Foundation Week will happen over 2 weeks in August. We then in September have a huge amount of kind of just administration to do with registration and whatnot. So we don't open the application then for the following year really until about the 1st of October, at which point the website will be refreshed. As you've noticed on the executive MBA, all of the dates are locked in for the full 2 years. So we know now what those dates are. We'll be passing them to our marketing colleagues. They'll update the website. And then anybody who's looking to join us in August 2027 will have their curriculum and their 2 years of dates locked in, and we will not change them. So it'll be very clear when Foundation Week will start, August 2027, and what the dates are for class, and what the dates are for your LEAP module, and so on and so forth, and also the travel dates. So they never change. So once we publish them, you can be guaranteed that we will be going to a foreign destination in X week in March. We'll be going to a foreign destination in the X week of May, and you will be able to make that known to your employer if you're currently working, and that's how the year rolls. So I do know where I'm going to be in the summer of 2029 by now, which is quite scary. And I will still be here at this desk, but there's something quite comforting in that. And we're very organized in that fashion, so there's no chopping and changing. And it's great, really, for the executive students because they're able to let their employers know where they're required to be and what their ask is in terms of annual leave or study leave, if you're so lucky to get it. So that's the way we roll. Okay. So I can't actually see any other questions coming in here on the Q&A, unless you have anything left to add to that, Gillian. Anybody else messaging you privately on chat or anything?
There's one, it hasn't come in directly, but it is generally around sort of option modules. I mean, you've mentioned GNAM in terms of the study abroad option,
Yeah.
but perhaps just around option modules.
Yeah,
I think that
sure.
covers it.
Yeah, so we are a broad business management degree, so we do not offer specializations. So in the round, the executive program, as it states on the website, is it. Okay. So option modules are available for what we call not for credit. So if there's anything that you see as part of what we offer the full-time MBA in terms of option modules, and should you need to make up 5 credits if something happens along the way and you're not able to make one of the travel modules, we offer 3 option modules to our full-time MBAs who do need to take options as part of their experience with us. One is actually happening next week. So it always happens in the June of every year, and that's called Strategy Development Systems with Professor Patrick Gibbons, which is a really nice roundup of all of the strategy modules that happen on the MBA as a matter of course, but then actually how organizations actually use strategy to make decisions in their business planning. And that option module is very popular. The other option modules are digital marketing and customer or consumer analytics with Dr. Julie Shiro, which is part of the marketing subject area, which happens in early January of every year. And then managing the negotiations process with Stephen Boyle, which is a weekly module, which happens during the term of spring. So it's not always ideal for executive MBA students. And in fact, we make that one available to them as part of their own curriculum anyway. So it's probably not something that people would like to take, but it is available to our full-time MBA students. So there are 3 option modules. They do vary from year to year, depending on what the academics would like to actually make available. Sometimes we have more than 3, but for this year, 3 was what we offered. And I would think that those 3 will probably be on offer again next year until I'm told otherwise. But yeah, that's how it goes. And it is first come, first choice basis. And we go through that process in about, Gillian, November of every year, late October, November. People choose their option modules for spring. And then that becomes part of your coursework and available to you. Okay. Alrighty, and that's it. So without further ado, I would just like to say thank you to my colleagues Louise and Mairead for joining us here today, and to all my marketing colleagues in the background who helped us put this webinar together, and to Gillian for fielding me those questions from the Q&A inbox. I hope this has given you a flavour for the MBA, but most importantly, I hope you've got to get a feel for us and how we roll on the MBA. It's a big team here to support you on your journey. It's a very significant decision in your life, and I'm hoping that this has helped you in some way along that journey. And to anybody who's joining us in August, we're all set. We can't wait to meet you. And if you have any questions or anything you'd like explained in further, just reach out to us, connect with us. You have our QR code there and our emails and our LinkedIn addresses. And yeah, we look forward to meeting you at some time in the future. Thank you all so much. Thank you. Bye bye.